A lot of people think, oh, you have to create this new thing or it's got to be technology. A lot of times innovation is just finding a need in the market and solving for it with the tools you have at your disposal. And that was a big part of what we did at Iconex with our label business over time.
Welcome back to Innovate or Evaporate, where we explore the relentless pace of change and the innovators who drive it. I'm your host, Toph Day. It seems like most podcasts today are around artificial intelligence, right? AI, LLMs, data centers, all of these high-tech businesses that are changing our lives forever over the last several years. But sometimes we need to stop and pause and think about maybe the manufacturers or those types of businesses that make the things that make our lives accessible every single day. How about the people who make the paper for the receipts that you need at the checkout counter? Or how about the labels that go on your favorite drink at your favorite coffee shop? Well, today we are joined by a CEO who has transformed businesses doing these exact types of things. Welcome to the show, Craig Gunckel. We are in Indianapolis for the Final Four, and Craig Gunckel, the CEO of ODP, which we're going to talk more about who ODP is in a minute, is in town for the Final Four. And Craig, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Toph. I'm glad to be here and excited. Looking forward to the Final Four, but really excited to see you, my friend.
Absolutely. Anytime I get to see you, which is a couple times a year we get to see each other.
Yep.
And your journey has always fascinated me. I think early in your career you were in the golf industry, right?
I did some work in the golf industry, packaging.
And so over the last, how long has it been with Iconex? We'll talk about it in a second, but you were with Iconex for how long?
About 8 years.
8 years, and now took over ODP, took it private. So what I really want to dive into on this podcast is a lot of times when we think about innovation, we tie that to like high tech, AI, all these new tools that are out there, especially this last 3 years. But you take a different route with innovation. And I want to go back to the time at Iconex. Talk to us about who Iconex was, how you got there, because you were the CEO there for all 8 years.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And we had a conversation once about receipts, and but we'll come to receipts in a second. But let's go back. How did you get to Iconex? And when you took over that company, tell us what Iconex did and why you were so excited about that opportunity.
Yeah, listen, so I had spent 20 plus years at a big, large public packaging company, and in 2017 I left there and had the opportunity to go run Iconex, which had been my first entree into private equity, but had been a business that had been carved out of NCR, and as you mentioned, we were in the receipt paper industry. Primarily, That was primarily what we sold, receipt paper, and we also had a very small label business when we bought the company.
And so what was your goal? When you took over Iconex, what was your goal?
Well, listen, we thought the business wasn't run well, which is why we bought it. We thought there was an opportunity for we had a contrary point of view on receipts. We didn't believe they were going to be gone in 5 years, and lo and behold, they weren't. In fact, they were quite strong when we sold the business. But we also believed we could do something pretty special with this label business. And this sort of going back to this idea of innovating. A lot of people think, oh, you have to create this new thing, or it's got to be technology. A lot of times, innovation is just finding a need in the market and solving for it. With the tools you have at your disposal. And that was a big part of what we did at Iconex with our label business over time.
I totally agree with that, right? A lot of times we talk about innovation. It's not just investors and entrepreneurs that have a hand in the innovation pie. It's all these other folks that are involved as well, and then just cross industry.
Right.
Well, I think it's going to be so fascinating when we see these modern tools, modern technology start to hit the mainstream kind of industries that are producing paper. Iconex, right? Big paper producer. Yep. And there's no shortage of ways to innovate those businesses. You had an interesting take on receipts, that the reason paper receipts will never go away from an audit, I think it was from an audit, if I recall it correctly. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah. Listen, I think people, there's still a lot of cash that's used in this society. People forget that not everybody has a credit card or an iPhone. So there's still a tremendous amount of cash transactions that receipt plays a valuable role. There's also expense reports. There's still plenty of companies still using paper receipts. I think it's actually been interesting since all these big data centers are coming online recently, and you hear a lot of talk about how much energy they use. Yep. Something you and I talked about a number of years ago is, paper receipt doesn't use energy after it's made. When you get a digital receipt, it just goes on and on and on and becomes actually more expensive than just doing a paper receipt in the first place. So I think again, innovation is good there. Digital receipts are good. It works for a lot of people, but there's still a large percent of the population that actually depends on that paper receipt.
Yep. So you worked with a private equity group, right, when you were the CEO of Iconex. And so talk to us about, there's CEOs of all different ilks, right? You have somebody starts a company, entrepreneur, they start it from scratch, pre-rev on a napkin, and they become the self-appointed CEO because they start the company. You've taken a very different path. And going more the corporate route, right? And so throughout your career, how did you build up a reputation that puts you in a position for a private equity group to tap you and say, hey, we think you have the caliber, you're the caliber and the skill set to be a CEO? Are there one or two or three kind of pivot points that got you to that position?
Yeah, look, I was in a big company, and it's interesting. I think I was always an entrepreneur that was hidden inside a corporate body. And as my career progressed, more and more I became a square peg in a round hole in my public company job. And got to the point where I was like, well, this isn't fun for me, and I'm not really enjoying this anymore. I don't like politics and bureaucracy, and as companies get big, that just happens. And by the way, going into private equity is not for everybody. There's plenty of people that work for big companies. It's just a different mindset when you're in private equity. You're investing your own money. You've got a lot more riding on success, not just showing up to work. But I always had that mentality in me. And so when I had the opportunity to go run my own business through private equity, just all those things sort of came to the surface and really started thinking about how to create value for my shareholders, which ultimately helped me create value for myself. But it was a pivot, so I went from, only running corporations. And then ironically, a few years ago, actually, I won an Entrepreneur of the Year award from Ernst Young. So it was almost a full 360 ride for me from corporate guy to entrepreneur. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's kind of the upper echelon. Like that's the top of the top, getting those EY.
That was pretty cool,
EY awards, because you're based out of Atlanta, Georgia, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So, all right. So you exit Iconex. Now, did you sell that to a strategic or to another private equity group, or?
Well, we sold it to two. So going back to the innovation part, we made a product that most people didn't realize we made. So we started the business. It was losing money. Receipt paper was tough. We did a bunch of acquisitions in the receipt industry, grew into the largest manufacturer of receipt paper in the world. We also developed this little product called Sticky Media. We owned over 100, maybe a couple hundred patents around these label products. And you would notice that label that goes on your Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts coffee cup.
Right.
So we grew that. We were the largest manufacturer of linerless labels in North America. So we sold to two different buyers. Both were strategics. One was we sold a receipt paper to Domtar, which is the largest manufacturer of actually the base paper that we bought. So it was an integration play for them. And similarly, we sold our label business to a group called M2S. And they had a play in labels and a lot of different sort of unique coatings. So in both cases, it was strategic buyers, but it was two transactions, which was also pretty interesting.
That is interesting, because a lot of times I've been involved in companies before where you might have one or two or three different lines of business, and sometimes they don't make sense packaged together. It makes more sense for those to be broken apart and create even more value. Are you allowed to talk publicly about when you exited, what the like when you entered versus when you exited?
I can't really talk about the numbers,
okay.
But what I could tell you is that if you invested $1 with us on day one, your sort of sunk capital at the end, we returned capital, a lot of capital along the way, was about a 15x return. So we took a paper receipt company that nobody thought was worth anything, and if you invested $1 with us the day we took over, you would have got 15x
That's amazing.
return. Yeah, it was great.
Because typical private equity returns like 3 to 5, probably. Roughly?
Yeah, I think that's right. Those are good, actually, if you get 3 to 5.
Yeah, that's right. So that's probably your top, maybe not even percentile. That might be top decile.
I don't know about that, but it was good.
I
was happy.
Equity.
I was happy.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Hi, I'm Mayor Chris Jensen. Innovation doesn't always start where you expect. Across Indiana, a new kind of innovation ecosystem is taking shape, bringing together elite athletics, advanced engineering, healthcare, and next-generation manufacturing. And it's happening in Noblesville. Discover what's taking shape at choosenoblesville.com/innovate. Noblesville, all about you.
So you sold that company.
Yep.
And then did you have a moment of like, what am I going to do now with the rest of my life?
I did. As you know, I was... I thought I was going to be semi-retired. I'm on several boards. I do some work with Purdue University. I was at yesterday doing some work on the board of the business school there. And I thought that would be enough. And, 2 months after I was semi-retired, I was like, I got to go back to work. I got bored. I missed the action. I love being I love being an investor in things. So did a bunch of investing, and then eventually I went back to the same private equity group, which is called Atlas Holdings. Said, hey, let's go find something to do together. And a partner and I had already been looking at the ODP group. Started buying stock in the ODP group, ultimately ended up buying the company. So I was only really out of a CEO seat for a little more than a year, about 14 months, and I was back into a new CEO role.
That's pretty fast transition, though.
It was pretty fun. It was a pretty fun time.
So ODP was publicly traded. You guys came in and you took it private. Now, is that process complete, or is that still some work to do?
All that's public process. So the ODP Corporation, we're now called the ODP Group, but when we bought it, it was called the ODP Corporation. Most people wouldn't know what that is unless they really knew this particular market. But you would know us. We own Office Depot, OfficeMax. Yep. So it's really the legacy Office Depot company that we bought. Yep. It's called the ODP Corporation. We took all the stock private on December 10th of 2025. So we negotiated for a while, public process to buy a public company. It ends up being a public process. We put our bid, ultimately won, and we signed a definitive agreement last August of 25, and we closed in December of 25. So
was it pretty competitive? Like 3 players or 10 or?
Yeah, it's on the proxies. There was a few other players.
Yeah.
There's a few other players. I don't know. I don't think it wasn't 10, but there were certainly some other bids for the business.
So now you're well on your way. You've been in the seat for 4 months.
4 months,
I think, right? And I've been watching you on LinkedIn, and you have been traveling all over the country. In those 4 months, how many states and cities have you been to, roughly, do you think?
Oh, gosh. I don't know states and cities. I'm sort of keeping count of the stores. I've been to 36 of our stores. I think I've been to 4 or 5 of our DCs. We also own a group. We own Grandin Toy in Canada. I've been to Canada a couple times. We have regional print centers. I've been to a couple of those. So I've probably been to 45 or 50 of our locations around the country and Canada so far.
So it's
been hectic, by the way. I'm kind of tired.
I bet. I mean, that's a lot of miles in the air, and away from your family, right?
Yep.
So what fascinates me about that is that success a lot of times just comes back to the basic building blocks of like relationships and people. And what I love is the energy you have brought to ODP. When I just watch that from afar, the energy that you brought to that, going out and meeting with the folks that are actually making the business happen. In the first 4 months, right? 36 stores you mentioned, plus even more locations, et cetera. That is not all CEOs are like that, right? There's a lot of CEOs that will kind of sit back in the ivory tower and hope things work out for the best. What kind of wisdom can you share with us on just the way you approach, that role?
Yeah.
Because we've all, worked with many different CEOs over our lives, right? And so, like, what are some of the insights that you think really lead to a path of success versus maybe less success?
Yeah. Look, great question, by the way. Well, first, I believe in culture, but I believe strategy is more important than culture in most cases. And in our case, we bought a business that's been on a path of decline. It's tough markets. It's office products primarily. So first, we have to sort of figure out what we're doing, what we have. And I'm a disciple guy named Roger Martin, wrote a book called Playing to Win. So the first thing I did essentially on day one is like, let's go with the executive team. Let's figure out what we want to do with this business, set them off on a journey to do that. And then I think it's important to build a strategy or a culture around that strategy. And culture is people. And for me, not only getting to learn the business, I didn't know the retail business, never been in the retail business before.
Yeah.
So going and spending time with my coworkers, and I use that term very deliberately. I don't believe, yes, I am the CEO, and yes, I have to make some pretty big decisions, but I'm no more important than anybody. And all of my coworkers, we have about 18,000 coworkers across the business, are just everything they do is just as important as I do.
Yep.
So going to learn from them, engaging them, empowering them to make decisions, making sure they understand that is super, super important to me. And I don't know any way to do it other than to be actually out with people, meeting, talking, learning. And, that's a little different than looking at spreadsheets in an office. I got some very smart people that are doing a lot of analytical work trying to figure out how to make this company better. And one of the most important things I can do is make sure that our coworkers really do understand they have the ability to do more things independently, act more independently. And again, like I said, the only way I do that is go talk to people. So
I love that. What you're making me think of is the book Good to Great. and I'm forgetting the author's name off the top of my head, but
Jim Collins.
Yes, Jim Collins.
Great book.
It's a great book. And so he goes out and he wants to just figure out why the best performing publicly traded companies of all time at that point in time, what made them the best, right? And I think he went to the top 10 or top 20 or something. Spent all of this time meeting with the CEOs, the management teams, et cetera. And my recollection of the book was, and my takeaway was basically, he's like, I can't figure out what made these companies better than the other companies. And laying in bed at one night, it finally hit him. He thinks it's because the CEOs of those companies were people first. They gave the credit to everybody else besides themselves. They were not arrogant, right? They were people. They were a CEO of the people, right? And relationships mattered. And I think it's interesting. And during that time frame, what was it? Tractor Supply was the number one best performing public stock when he was looking at all those companies. Pretty interesting story. Yeah. And so you are literally exhibiting those traits. That's your style.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, people, it's not only people first. I also believe it's safety first. I think we have an inherent responsibility as leaders in any organization to take care of our coworkers, and that starts with safety. So the other thing that you, on top of just being with people, is really driving a culture around safety, driving new behaviors, which we've already done at ODP and Office Depot and our other businesses. So, because it's not just about, Toph, it's not just about going out there and taking pictures and shaking hands. It really is engaging and learning from the folks that are doing the job, making sure they understood that their basic needs around safety and having a job, we're going to do everything we can to protect that. And I think when people believe that you are doing all you can to support them, they will give you 100% every day, all day. They'll get excited. And again, I think a lot of times leaders fail because they simply don't have a strategy. And even if they do, they're not communicating on a regular basis to their coworkers. I just believe those two things are fundamentally important to running in a company. And it served me well for 30 plus years in business and doing some pretty cool stuff. So I'm pretty committed to that people first idea. So
if I remember correctly, you earned a red shirt or something in your first 4 months?
I did. I did a podcast with the leader of our retail business. His name's Kevin Moffitt. He does a weekly podcast with his for his retail stores, and he asked me to do one, and I put on a red shirt, which I didn't know was a big deal when I put it on, and he sort of gave me a hard time. He's like, you really have to earn that shirt. You really need to go to our print centers and get trained. I'm like, all right, that's cool. So I didn't wear a red shirt again until every store I went to for a while. We have these amazing print centers.
Yes.
We can do anything in our stores with print and copy. And I got trained. So I got trained on large format printers and laminating and bookbinding and all these different things. And when they decided I'd been trained on a piece of equipment, we had a big sales kickoff or a big kickoff meeting for the retail stores. And at the end of the meeting, they awarded me with a red shirt. So I wore my red shirt officially for the first time a few weeks ago. It was exciting. It was cool.
That's totally awesome.
It made me... I was proud and honored, but I was humbled by the reception I got from my coworkers for earning my red shirt. It was really cool.
Yeah, that's totally awesome. So, all right, so let's close out here with you've not only been successful, right, with multiple companies, but also you've been doing some work to give back. You mentioned Purdue earlier, and I know you volunteer some time. I think you're on the. Tell us about that. You're giving back to Purdue, and I think you're on the board of the Daniel School. If I had that correctly.
In fact, I was there yesterday. I spent about half of the day working with some folks inside the school about the graduate programs. We're talking about some recruiting stuff and placement and thinking about what their MBA program should look like. So that's all fun. But I've been involved in the Daniel School business, or it was Cranor, now the Daniel School business, for about 10 years. Last year, a couple years ago, Jim Bullard became our new dean of the school.
He's amazing.
He's great. I had dinner with him last night, in fact.
Yep.
He's just an amazing guy. Pretty funny for an economist, actually, as I was teasing him last night. But he's great. And last year he asked me to join his executive committee. So really serving close what Jim needs me to do to help him and trying to serve as an advisor to him. So I love that. I love Purdue. I'm a Boilermaker through and through. I have a son who's with me today, and he's a junior in aeronautical engineer. So a lot of give back to Purdue. Again, if you have the opportunity to work with these young men and women in college, it's really cool how smart they are. I mean, we got a very bright future when you meet these kids. I've also put a lot of time and energy into the Boy Scouts over the year, now Scouting of America, I suppose it's called. And I was so I've been involved in the Atlanta Area Council for a number of years, and I'm proud of this one fact that a couple weeks ago I got the Silver Beaver Award, which is one of the highest awards you can get as a volunteer in scouting. So that was
awesome.
pretty cool too. Yeah, but I think a lot of times as leaders, you forget that we have an obligation to give back. It's not just to my coworkers, not just my family. It's also you got to give back to the communities that we live, work, and serve in, and you got to work to make these communities better. So I've done a bunch of stuff over the years to do that. And it's also a great way, for young entrepreneurs to get to meet people.
Yep.
To get leadership. If you're doing things and you're sort of by yourself maybe, or you got a small business trying to learn how to lead, like it's an awesome opportunity to get leadership skills and have the ability by joining these and volunteering in these local and even national charitable organizations. So I would encourage anybody to listen to get involved somehow, somewhere.
So no doubt some of our listeners here are the next generation of leaders, of CEOs. They're looking for great opportunities or maybe even talent coming out of universities. When you think about talent, when you're looking for people, what are 1, 2, or 3 things that you are looking for that they exhibit when you invite them onto your team?
Yeah, look, I think being a curious thinker is like the most important thing. Yeah. Someone once said to me, be more interested, less interesting.
Yep.
So ask questions, figure people out, talk to people, figure processes out. So I always find that to be the one thing that when the best people I've worked with over the years have that ability to be curious. Look, I think the other thing is politics and bureaucracy, no good. I find that's no good. So work to be genuine, be authentic.
Yep.
I get asked a lot of times, why do I do this? Why do I talk to somebody? Why am I so transparent? It's like, look, that's the only way I need to be. So I think if you're curious, you're authentic. Of course, you have to have some brain power.
Right.
So work hard in school to get the basic fundamentals you need to be successful. But I think those attributes are important. I think the other thing, again, I talked about strategy being very important to me. I find that most people don't really understand strategy. They think about it as a task. I think about it as a process. So again, I think the leaders that I've been around and the best CEOs I've been around are not only people-oriented or people-first, Toph, they're also usually really good strategic thinkers, and they use a process to drive strategy. So that's a lot. It's hard to have all that coming straight out of school, but you can certainly be curious as a young age,
Yep.
And you can certainly have the ability to think about other people first. And those two things are usually are good. So that's what I look for in people.
I love that word curious. It's a powerful word. All right, so we're gonna move into some rapid fires here to close out. So these are one word or a couple sentences, whatever comes to mind.
All right. Don't get me in trouble.
I try to throw some fun doozies out there. We get some awesome, just immediate reactions that are just amazing. I learn stuff on these podcasts every time I do it with somebody. But what is one thing in your industry that and you can pick any industry, going back 30 years, but what is one thing that you think people in your industry should stop doing?
Oh, geez. Any industry. Well, look, I think right now is an interesting time in the retail industry. And I think people are so intent on thinking about what Amazon's doing. They've lost a little focus on their own, why they exist. And so I think as a retailer, I'm learning quickly is like, be focused on what we can be good at, what we can be differentiated, what we can offer to somebody, and not trying to chase somebody else. I think that's happening a lot in retail. And so I would stop doing that if I was in the retail business, or if you're in the retail business. What is
something that comes to mind? Like, what is one thing that people could do to help disrupt or innovate themselves?
Oh, geez. I think disruption is there's lots of examples of things that sort of happen, but I think I'd go back to process. Like, have a process around strategy. Think why you're different. What do you offer that no one else can do, or what do you offer maybe you can do better than somebody else? I think a lot of times we get caught up in trying to be something we're not. Just be yourself. What differentiates you? I would encourage people to think about that.
On strategy, I love that you brought strategy up earlier, because strategy, I think some people think is something you create and you put it on a shelf and you revisit it once a year. And that's not what strategy is.
I mean, look, you got to do some initial work to sort of figure out, where you're going to play, how you're going to win, what's going to make you different. But it is not something that you put on a shelf. The way that I lead a company, every month I have my executive team together for a day and a half in person somewhere. And a third of that time, half of a day is focused on strategy.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Are we tracking against what we said we want to do? What do we need to tweak? What's working? What's not working? And again, I'm an easy read. If you go read the book Playing to Win, you know my entire process on strategy. It's not a secret. But it is something we work at every month, something I think about every day.
I love it. All right, last question. If you could wave a magic wand and solve any problem in the world, what would it be?
Peace. We've got constant conflict around the world. At the end of the day, it'd be nice if someday this world could just all get along. I know we're a long way from there right now, but I think peace for humanity would be the thing I would solve.
I love it. So for our audience, our listeners out there, if you've ever asked for a paper receipt, if you've ever gotten the little sticker on the Starbucks cup, that was Craig Gunckel, CEO of Iconex, now the CEO of ODP, 4 months in the seat. I cannot wait to see. I love Office Depot, by the way, as well. And
come check out Office Depot. We got a lot of cool stuff going on there. We're leaning into some new stuff. So come check out a store if you haven't been in one lately. We're going to surprise some people.
I love it. Absolutely. Craig, thank you very much for joining Innovate or Evaporate. Enjoy the Final Four tonight. It's going to be awesome. And welcome to Speed City, Indianapolis. People are starting to call it Speed City. So thanks for coming on the show.
I thought they were calling it the Rally City.
Well, maybe that's next.
Thanks for having me, Toph. Really, really great time, and I'm looking forward to a couple good games tonight. So cheers.
Absolutely. All right. Until next time, we'll see you soon on Innovate or Evaporate.